everyone. Welcome back to The Common Thread, the official podcast of the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground. It's a brand new semester, and we do have some big changes around here. I have two brand new fantastic co-hosts, Will Clapp and Howard DePass. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my other work husbands, Tarif Ahmed and Greg Wilson, they're currently gone for the semester. Tarif is busy doing an internship in D.C., and Greg decided to go over to London to study. So when I miss them dearly, it's very sad, and I can't wait for them to get back. But in the meantime, I'm really excited for all you guys to get to know Will and Howard. Just a little bit about them. Will is a sophomore studying international relations in German. Am I right about that?
No, actually political science in German.
Political science in German. He used to work over at WTVU Radio. He's also a really enthusiastic activist. He's worked with the Anti-War Coalition, Students for Justice in Palestine. Those are the two off the top of my head. And Howard is a junior and a Posse Scholar. It's such a great organization. You guys should definitely look into it. And he's studying English and Psych, and he just got back from a semester abroad in London. And yeah, if you guys recognize their names, Will and Howard were guests on an episode last semester when we were talking about politics abroad, and they both blew me away in the taping. So I'm really glad to have them on now. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
I don't even feel like you guys are brand new because we've been working on this for a couple months now, getting everything
well, this episode's
together.
been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has. It's been a good process.
I started talking to you guys about this, in December? It's like, hey, you guys want to
about
do
that,
this?
yeah, like right after the taping about about the politics abroad, yeah.
So we're ready. We're so excited for this semester, and we have a lot of great stuff lined up. We're super excited for you guys to hear. But we have such a great show for today. We have Luke Rebecchi, a senior majoring in econ, on to talk about drones. So welcome, Luke.
Thank you.
So there's been a lot of stuff right now about drones in the media right now. It's a pretty hot topic, a very controversial topic. I mean, I guess the place to start is really talk about it domestically, because that's what's making all the news right now.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm sure as everyone here listening knows, there was the Christopher Dorner case, which happened a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles. He was an ex-police officer who went rogue and started just going homicidal on other police officers. And so that has gotten a lot of media attention. But one interesting question that's come out of that is whether or not it's ethical to use drones domestically. Mm-hmm. We've been using them for a long time in other countries, but the Christopher Dorner case was one of the first ones where people really started talking about using drones to track him down. And mainly what we're going on that suggests that he is targeted by drones are sort of rumors. There are one or two articles from newspapers in the UK that have suggested that he is in fact a target. But those have been hushed up by American authorities. So it's hard to tell what's really going on, but I think either way it raises some interesting questions.
I mean, and this is the first possible, it's not entirely confirmed, but it's the first possible public use.
That's right. Well,
known use of drones on American soil.
So either way, legally speaking, it is not known because drones are still technically a covert action, which means that they're not public information. Most of the information that we have on drones has leaked in some way or another. Mm-hmm. It's still, legally speaking, secret to the Congress, the CIA, and the head of state.
But we have people making statements about them all the time. So it's like one of those things where it's covert, but
right. So like, only legally is it still a secret. I think everyone knows that everyone knows about it.
Right. Worst kept secret ever. But yeah, their use has increased a lot since their launch in the 1980s in the Iran-Iraq War. This concept actually, they came up with it in, I think, 1940. A paper was published on it, and they just started using them, 40-odd years later? And now they're just, like, commonly used in so many countries throughout the world. But it raises a lot of ethical issues. Under the Geneva Conventions, they're not even allowed.
Well, the Geneva Conventions are interesting because they were written in 1949, so they wouldn't have really mentioned drones in the Geneva Conventions. I think that there are similar weapons that they do mention. We can kind of extrapolate from that drones would be illegal, but they don't specifically mention drones.
No, but it also has to do with accountability.
Right, that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a complete lack of accountability in the United States use of drones, at least.
And just to be sort of sure and clear, so President Obama has permitted the use of drones in the country?
Supposedly, yeah.
The FAA didn't pass the bill, but it's understood from the FAA that by 2015, work will be done and completed so that drones can be used domestically. And the number is something around like 10,000 drones by 2015 flying in American skies, doing things ranging from search and rescue missions to surveying for oil and gas companies, border surveillance. At the same time, the FAA does prohibit dropping anything from flying objects from planes, so I don't think we have to worry about Hellfire cruise missiles being fired in the United States.
Well, I did see that actually, in terms of ownership, they can be privately owned by, private individuals, universities, supposedly. And I'm not totally, completely anti-drone. I see the merits of them, but it's a little scary that private individuals can have them.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I can go to the toy store right now and buy like a remote control helicopter that flies, which is the same idea as a drone. I mean, that I can.
Yeah, I think.
We're right, but it's what it can do.
Right. So
these can hold tear gas.
Last year, or I guess 2 years ago now, in 2011, there was actually a man in Massachusetts who was arrested because he got like a military-grade drone, strapped missiles to it, and then tried to send it to the Pentagon. But
really?
Yeah, the authorities caught him before that happened. And that piece of information came from CNN, so if you Google some of that, you can probably find the article. But that kind of use is just terrifying. Like, even having this kind of technology around and developed, it could so easily fall into the wrong hands. And as we've seen, it has fallen into the wrong hands. Just we've been fortunate enough to have intercepted the use before it actually happened.
The thing that really is interesting to me is that there's so much disagreement over collateral damage of civilians, if you will. You have John Brennan, who's the CIA director nominee. He's saying, no, drones completely reduce it. Then you have real-life examples of thousands of deaths in Pakistan, especially, which have just made our approval ratings plummet.
I'm pretty anti-drone, but I do think the number thousands is a little bit liberal. I think in one article that I read, it said that the highest estimation was 786 civilians, which is roughly 1/3 of the deaths related to drones. Mm-hmm. So if you die in a drone attack, there's a 2/3 chance that you're the target and a 1/3 chance that you're the civilian. Among those 786 deaths, I think about 170 of them were children too. So it's still a large number.
Yeah.
I do have to take a bit of issue with some of those numbers. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism, who I think is definitely the most liberal in accounting for these drone attacks, claims that on a range scale from 473 to 893 civilian deaths since 2004 in Pakistan, and that's out of 1,600, so that's since 2004. In the last 2 years, since 2010, 172 out of the 1,616 people killed in Pakistan were civilians, and that's a 12% kill rate as far as civilians are concerned, as a portion of the entire, the totality. In comparison, in Iraq, 120,000 civilians were killed. That's 5 times more than the number of Iraqi troops, soldiers that were killed.
You mean in Iraq? Are you talking just about like since the war on terror?
Since 2003. Okay. 120,000 civilians. If my math is correct, that means that 25,000 soldiers were killed, Iraqi soldiers were killed. Drones weren't used in Iraq. That wasn't the method, the weapon of choice. I think that the imbalance between those two numbers does show that drones as a tool of war are a lot less indiscriminate than an F-16.
I mean, I do see the merit of having drones. Madeleine Albright actually came out supporting them, saying, when we were using aircraft carriers, in the Balkans, people were like, well, no, that's completely unethical. You need boots on the ground. You need soldiers doing it. That's not the way we fight wars, and why would we put soldiers' lives at risk if we don't have to? And it's kind of the same argument now for drones. Why would we put these pilots in there if they don't have to be? Why would we try to lose more of our soldiers if we don't have to? But at the same time, when you don't have people actually there engaging in these, wartime activities, what are you losing in terms of humanity? What are the risks in terms of just thinking, oh, I'm just pushing a button? Well, that button is killing how many people?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most enormously important arguments against drones, because there's that classic psychological example of the thought experiment where you take people and you say, okay, you can stop a train that's about to run over 3 people by like pulling a lever,
Right.
or in that like in some way kills another person, or you can actually like push a huge man onto the tracks and it like kills him, but you do have to do the pushing, but it also saves the other 3 lives. So the idea is like you're more likely to take the utilitarian perspective and save the 3 lives instead of the 1 if you're not the one who actually has to physically do the pushing. So I think that leads to the conclusion that we would be much less discriminating in our selection of where to actually go into combat if we didn't have people actually doing the killing, because I mean, there wouldn't be that psychological connection to the battlefield. It would just be kind of this abstraction. We wouldn't be thinking of it in terms of human lives, just sort of like a video game almost.
I think I would like to see just more accountability in general. I don't think getting rid of drones is the answer.
On whose part exactly?
I think on the part, just in general, the part
Yeah.
of people using them. You know, you can using them. It's a great idea. We don't have to put more soldiers on the ground, you know, in conflicts. We don't have to lose that many more lives, but, you know, I mean, they're not even having people who are in the military operate these sometimes. You have just personnel in the White House that are pushing buttons. That's a little scary to me.
Well, it's a CIA-run organization, so often it's not people in the military, and it is people related to the CIA, but I think it's a little bit strong to say that it's just like random people in the White House.
Well,
yeah.
I think that one of the dangerous things about it is the disconnect between, you know, soldiers actually doing fighting and, you know, the killing and so on. That's obviously more personal than somebody being in control of the drones from a room per se. You know, and I think that them not, if you want to relate it back to the psychological perspective, them not knowing exactly who's going to get killed, or like not being able to actually see that person physically, they're able to do so with such a strong disconnect that it's almost that it's not that big of a deal, as opposed to the soldier or whoever who's actually doing it in the war.
I mean, drones aren't meant to replace boots on the ground per se, right? Like the future of this counter-terror war will still involve special operations teams doing house raids and whatever else it is they do. Drones are meant to replace F-16s, as I mentioned earlier, flying in the sky. And when you look at those, you know, what it's trying to replace, let's not go too far in assuming that flying a plane 20,000 feet above the air and dropping clusters of bombs on little dots on the ground is like a sensitive matter. That's desensitizing in itself as well.
It's
Howard
same
Zinn.
concept.
Howard Zinn, a personal favorite Howard Zinn story. He was talking about his time as a bombardier in World War II, and he said at that time he didn't think much of dropping all these clusters of bombs on little dots on the ground. It wasn't until he, you know, afterwards when he took a more holistic picture of what he was doing that he understood that. I'll agree so much that pushing a button and killing someone 10,000 miles away it can certainly be desensitizing, but what we're comparing it to, right? Beyond that, when I'm at that video game, right, and I'm driving, you know, flying my drone around, I have a better view of the people below me, what I'm doing. I can fly over there and survey the land for hours at a time. They do that. They're stationed in the sky for days at end. And upon when they have what they believe to be a good enough recognition that there's a target there, they drop a bomb, right? And that brings it to the argument that these things are better. I mean, of the terrible tools of war, right now they're the best we have.
What about when it comes to using them for the purpose of killing? Because they're not necessarily used for that. They're used for surveys, like you said. They're used for thermal imaging, search and rescue, all, you know, noble or neutral causes. What do you think about them being used for a specific purpose?
Within the realm of war, I'll rephrase what I said a minute ago, that of the tools available to us, they're all terrible. Drones are the least terrible.
Why?
Because they kill the fewest amount of people that we don't want dead. They kill the fewest civilians.
Fair. Some people would agree with you, some wouldn't.
The numbers agree with me. 70% of the people killed in the Korean War were civilians. 33% of the people killed in Vietnam were civilians.
I mean, in terms of accuracy, there's some thought that because you have pilots, not actually behind, in the cockpit of this drone, there's a lag time and it can result in a lapse of judgment or errors in judgment.
Also, going back to the numbers, I think that we have to be extremely skeptical of the numbers that we're given on drones because it is still technically a covert action. So we're not getting any official numbers from the government about it. All the numbers are coming from outside sources. So we have to ask ourselves, how would they know? You can go to the ground and ask around or do your own research, but it's just not going to be accurate no matter what.
What I've been kind of curious is if these numbers, if militants, if they use the same definition that President Obama uses of militants, which is any male that's above the age of 18. Is that and if that is the case, throw some of these numbers into skew. But at the same time, we're launching a war where even if everyone was a civilian death, we've only had 1,616 of them in Pakistan in the past 2 years. And if you look at conventional warfare over the past century, that would certainly be viewed as an anomaly.
Yeah, but is that because of the drones or is it because of the nature of the war? Pakistan is still technically an ally of the United States. We're just after certain individuals in Pakistan. So, we can't even really compare that to a total war where we're at war with the entire country and opposed to their government as a whole.
Well, maybe, the future doesn't have the United States and China going to war with each other. Maybe the future is, countries going to war with non-state actors. And if that's the case, it's probably a good idea that we don't have carpet bombing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not proposing that we do carpet bombing, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that if that is in fact the future of warfare and it's states versus non-state actors, then we can't really compare the numbers to old wars when it was states versus states. It's a whole different game.
Different game is in...
It's just not even the same type of warfare at all.
It's not. It's nothing like it used
apples
to be.
and oranges. If we want to say that.
What I have to say bothers me the most about this, and this isn't even necessarily completely specific to drones, but now that there's domestic use, you have so many Americans, a majority, who are up in arms about their use. It's an infringement on our privacy. It's wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And I'm just how hypocritical can you be? What? No. You cannot, because a majority of Americans approve of using them abroad, but a majority of Americans disapprove of using them on our own soil. And I'm this is why people think that Americans are ridiculous. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that brings up another really interesting point, which is that there are 50 countries in the world that are currently developing or working on purchasing drone warfare. So I think that it's going to be terrifying for Americans when we see that argument turn on us. And people are saying, okay, well, we're just trying to wipe out this American gun factory or something and then kill 600 civilians in the process. A lot of those arguments that we're making right now in favor of drone warfare abroad can be used by other countries on us, and I don't think we'd be super happy if that came to fruition.
Those other countries would know we wouldn't be super happy.
That's true. Some of the countries that are developing drone warfare, though, are particularly scary because they're countries in which we are using drones right now. So I think that they would use even less discretion when using them against us. Those include Pakistan and Yemen. Among others are Iran.
There's a lot of unrest in Yemen right now.
There is. Yeah, well, that's one of the main countries where we've been using them. Civilian casualties have been, I think, higher there than any other country. But yeah, also China and Russia are developing drones. So it's really all over the world. I think it will be a pretty globally possessed technology soon.
I don't know. it really bothers me that there's this disconnect between what happens here. It's such an us versus them mentality.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
Definitely, and I think that one of the main things, like, sort of behind that mentality is almost it's fine just as long as it's not us.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's, it's
Other people fine.
Right. And I think that there's a lot of neglect when it comes to people looking at U.S. citizens looking at U.S. as a country as the bad guy.
Right.
So people are often quick to label other countries as the wrongdoers and so on and so forth. But when it comes to taking responsibility for our actions in terms of harming other countries and being sort of holding injustice, people tend to shy away from that. So using drones in our country, a big no-no, right? But in everywhere else, why not?
I mean, I think it would be actually a far better idea if we're going to use them abroad. Then we should be using them here a lot more. I think it would teach us a certain amount of respect. It's the same idea, whereas in the police academy, they spray cops in training with mace because they don't want you using that if you haven't experienced it yourself. You need to have respect for the tool you're using. So we have them here. We know what it's like. Then we understand its power if we're going to use them abroad.
Do they shoot those cops in training?
They don't.
So there's a limit, right?
Okay, there's a limit, and I see what you're doing, and you always do this, and that's why I wanted you on the show.
I'm just saying.
No, I get what you mean. There's a limit. We're only going to take, that force so far, but it helps.
Yeah,
it helps.
The people of Pakistan, the people of Yemen, I mean, I don't know them personally, but I imagine a lot of them are not okay with drones being flown over there, right? But to say that since we do it over there, we should be okay with it having be done here. I mean, it kind of just disregards the idea of states and the international system and how that works.
I mean, fair. It's just that I think that it goes back to the hypocrisy thing. You can't just push something.
I mean, we have anti-air missile systems in this country where if you try to flow a drone here, we'd shoot it down pretty quickly.
Right. Well, they're making drones extremely small. There are some that literally fit in the palm of your hand.
That's not going to have a bomb attached to it.
Not a bomb, no.
Snooping around, perhaps.
Right. But it can still have surveillance equipment on board. On board. It's so small. It's like a little toy plane. Much more powerful.
So I think another problem with that line of thinking that if we're going to allow drones abroad, we should allow them here is that the people affected by drones flying around the United States are not the people who will be operating them. I think so. It would be more analogous if we had drones flying around the CIA headquarters or something, because the CIA agents are the people who are operating them. I think that your example, to go back to the cops spraying cops with mace thing, I think it's more like cops spraying civilians with mace so that they know what it feels like to spray someone with mace. Because
don't step out of line.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see your point. I do see your point. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I don't know. You're very anti-drone, though.
I'm extremely anti-drone.
You don't believe
that
in
is
them at
true.
all?
No,
Not for
I
anything.
don't think that we should use them. And okay, this is one of the most important arguments I think that has not come up yet, and that is that one of the foundations of international human rights and laws in almost every country is that every civilian, every individual is entitled to a fair trial for any crime that they commit. Like, that has always been essential, like, all through history.
Sure.
In every liberal society, that is essential. And drones eliminate that. Even abroad, when we're trying to take down a terrorist or something, traditionally we would have arrested that terrorist and given them a trial.
How many terrorists have we arrested in the war on terror?
Kind of a lot.
Arrested in the legal sense?
In any sense, and given a fair trial. I mean, not many.
Oh.
How many have seen their day in court, have been had all their constitutional rights extended to them?
I don't know. I would actually have to do some research on that because I'm not sure what the numbers are, but
it's not many.
We don't extend constitutional rights to non-citizens when it comes to terrorists. We just
right. Yeah. But either way, we have traditionally taken like an anti-assassination approach, or at least publicly said that we did.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of incidents in American history where we have gone back on that and actually assassinated other leaders, but we've always said that we were anti-assassination. And this also goes against that, because it's just indiscriminately killing people who we think probably have some connection to terrorism, rather than going through a lengthy process to actually prove it and assure to ourselves and their country that we do need to be taking them down. And so that argument also extends to domestic use, and I think is even strengthened in the question of domestic use, because those are citizens who do have constitutional rights and are entitled to a fair trial. And so if we're just gunning them down, it completely undermines the value of our constitutional rights.
When you say citizens, do you mean citizens of the U.S.?
Of the United States, yeah. I was talking
Is
about
that-
domestic abuse or domestic use.
Domestic, okay, because I was going to
Yeah.
say in terms of international use.
But I mean, if to use the Chris Dorner scenario, due process would have it that police officers stormed that cabin and tried to arrest Chris Dorner.
Right.
Going into that cabin, it's well known that this man, what seems to be a terrible case of roid rage, is killed. Was 2 or 3 people. Was holding 2 others hostage in the cabin. Should I, knowing all of that, should it be expected of police officers to walk in there and get gunned down? If knowing that we have had communications with this individual, is there a point in time when you forego your right to due process and then literally flying a drone over there and bombing that cabin? Or
What about the hostages?
or throwing, a lit cigarette on that cabin and sparking it on fire, whatever, tear gas, whatever it was they used. I mean, assuming that like the hostage, this is
Assuming the hostages.
Assuming the hostages have.
I mean,
gotten out.
I see your point. I don't
Is there a
personally, on a moral level, yes. On a legal level, I'm not sure how we could ever legislate that so that it wouldn't become a terrible abuse of power. But from a moral standpoint, if it was, someone I loved who he had killed.
I mean, cops
and
shoot people. That
that's
happens.
a reality, yeah. And you know what? If it honestly, even as someone who has no connection to the case, I think why risk, a man or a woman's life because this guy is supposed to get due process when he's probably going to kill them? Why do that? I get that. I get that argument.
Yeah, I think that if our government can justify using drones for someone like Christopher Dorner once, they can justify it again and again, and the circumstances become less and less severe every time, and eventually, I don't usually like the slippery slope argument, but I think it's particularly relevant here.
Right. And it's the slippery slope. Like, it's just, it goes back to that thing where you're like, why can't everyone do the right thing? But for real.
Yeah.
Right.
Why is it that the fact that we have to worry about it, that, you have to worry about that abuse of power?
Drones, I think it's a case of technology just progressing faster than human beings progress. You see that with a lot of things.
That's an interesting thought. I agree with
We're
that.
not really all that. We don't have a strong enough culture or politic to deal with what having a drone technology what having a drone technology needs,
So as far as you're concerned, when do you think drones should be used? Do you think there should be any restrictions?
Where are we talking?
I'm
Domestically,
leaving it open-ended.
in the world?
You fill in the blank.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, okay. In the world, I think the United States, like all other states, has the right to defend its interests, has the right to defend its people, its territory, its sovereignty. And I think that using drones to protect that right is okay in the international system. If domestically speaking, again, this is, how do we, there's a lot of benefit that could come from this technology of having, as terrible as it sounds, eyes in the sky. Are we mature enough to handle that?
As a society, you mean?
As just individuals who, it's not society that's at the steering wheel. It's individuals that are at the steering wheel. And are those individuals mature enough to handle that? I don't know. I'm a bit hesitant on that. But that's not an indictment of drones as technology. It's an indictment of human beings and where they are right now.
I agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. But is it where human beings are right now, or just in general?
What do you mean?
I mean,
Could we ever come to a place where we could wield? Sure.
You think?
Yeah.
How?
How do we come to a place where we can
Theoretically
maturely handle drones?
Well, I mean, what do we have to do to understand the impact, the gravity of the situation?
First of all, we have to start talking about it. No one wants. I mean,
Check.
the media likes to talk. Oh, yeah, check, right? Check here.
Everybody,
Thank you
tune
for
in.
doing this, guys.
We're getting there.
No, but we have to have a president that's a bit more forthright.
Right.
A executive branch is a bit more forthright and willing to
So maybe
talk about what they're doing. At the very
public
least.
acknowledgement, so to speak.
A little more than that.
Elaborate.
Active engagement.
A speech would be nice.
A speech.
This is what we've been doing. This is why we're doing it. This is, I mean, we don't have to go through the hundreds of instances, but the matters of concern, the killing of Al-Awlaki, the killing of his son. Let's go through why we did that very publicly, and let us know. What's it look like for the future? What are the talking points? I can't take from you the roles that being commander in chief come with. At the very least, we can ask that you be honest about it. I don't think President Obama's passed the honesty test thus far at all.
Has any president, to be fair?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
Maybe.
but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do.
No.
Still
No,
thinking.
No.
No.
I don't think that's really an argument for Obama, though. I think that's an argument against all of the presidents.
No, absolutely. It's not a diss to Obama. I love Obama.
Politics in
I voted for
general.
him, but he's president. That comes with a certain amount of discretion, shall we say?
Is
to be
discretion the
expected.
same thing as dishonesty?
I feel like there's a very blurry line, and we as civilians cannot necessarily always understand that line.
He's a civilian too.
He's a civilian, yes, but he's in a
lot more power.
extraordinary position of power.
I mean, you have to think about the response as well, right? Like, I mean, that's a wonderful picture or portrait to paint, of
Right.
a speech coming out by President Obama and saying, this is what we've been doing, this is why we've been doing, this is what we plan on doing. You have to think of the response and the lasting effects of us civilians, and like what that says in terms of our comfort level and like how they move forward once there is more active engagement from the people. Like will that even change anything? Will a speech to that degree do much? That like, and I think that's one of the more dangerous aspects of it. It's one of those things where action can be done, but what will come out of that? What will be proven after that?
Well, I think with this, there's a very concise answer to that, and that is transparency, because it is still a covert action. So like just them getting that out from hiding would help so much, because then we could actually have public discussions about this. It could be a topic of debate during political debates.
Right.
They could talk about it on the floor of Congress. We would have those numbers that we were talking about earlier that we didn't have because it's a covert action. So even lay people could talk about it more accurately.
Right.
So I think it would help a lot.
I wonder if we as a society are ready to acknowledge that there is this kind of technology, though. Would there be mass panic?
I think we have to acknowledge it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
there.
there.
It's there, but just because it's there doesn't mean people are ready to handle it. I'm not condoning or advocating for it. I'm just wondering out loud.
My grandparents still don't know how to use the internet. My dad does still know how to use the internet. I mean, maybe his generation will die off not knowing how to use the internet, but
Right.
but maybe the next cohort of young people will grow up in a world where all they know is drones or all they know is the internet, and they'll the test of time will
Has to
imprint them
happen.
with a bit more responsibility, maybe.
Has to happen sometime, right? I get it. No, I definitely get it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe that's how we become mature enough to handle them. I don't know.
By just kind of
Time.
time.
Yeah, I mean, drones are a bit different because not everyone has access to drones, right? I have access to the
Yet.
internet. Everyone has access to the internet, right? Like,
That's
true.
Thank
Well,
God.
yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll all have little drones one day, and
Yeah.
it'll be like, ooh, I want to see what my boyfriend's up to when I'm not around. Click. For real, though.
And
Like,
that's
we
into
don't
that
know where it's
relationship.
going to go. I mean, they're used for surveillance.
No, absolutely.
I could
Absolutely.
see some jealous teenage girls using them for that reason. Just
That wouldn't be
saying.
illegal, I don't think.
No, definitely not.
I mean, you don't own your air rights, the rights to the air above you, do you?
No.
I mean, I could spy on other people.
Well, I know that this is not an individual personal thing, but several states have passed legislation or are in the process of passing legislation to forbid drones in their airspace.
Yeah, federal law is going to, North Carolina, federal law will trumps that. It's more symbolic than anything.
Does it trump it, though? Because
Yeah.
it's not specifically in the Constitution. States have the right, unless it's...
In the Constitution, though, it says that the federal government trumps the state government.
But if it's something that's not specifically listed in the Constitution, it automatically goes to the states.
Well,
Unless you had, like, a federal ruling.
Laws.
If you have a federal ruling on
Yeah,
it.
so like
But we're not there
marijuana
yet.
in this country federally
Right.
is illegal, but Colorado legalized it.
Right,
It's
so
still
as-
illegal in Colorado,
right.
though. Like federal agents could still come in and arrest people
Right.
for smoking marijuana.
Yeah, as of right now, the states have the right, but who knows how long they will.
Nullify.
I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll all have drones one day. Maybe not will.
Yeah, that
I don't
sounds
see what-
terrible. No,
What
I'm
about
kidding.
Not
Or, like,
Will
go live in
or
a
his
submarine or
kids.
something.
No,
Okay.
no drones for you.
None of
Daddy, all
that.
I want is a drone for Christmas. Absolutely not.
Dystopian novels that covered this that were written like a century ago.
Man.
We should have listened.
What about for surveillance though? Or not surveillance. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Not surveillance. For like search and rescue. I mean, thermal imaging. That's an amazing technology.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I think it's only wrong when it's used for belligerent purposes. I think those are entirely different. Just because the technology is called the same thing and uses the same techniques doesn't mean that it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's totally true. I wonder what do you guys happen to know the numbers on how many drones are used for what purpose? How many are used for?
That would be interesting to
Any idea?
find out.
No, I have no idea.
Because we know that they exist for different purposes, but it's a question of how much.
Really, police. We haven't talked about what police.
Police using
drones
them?
to surveil.
They do and they can. I mean, police departments can own them, just like private individuals. The thing that threw me was universities. I'm like, why do universities need drones? And what are they using them for?
Research.
Research?
I mean, universities are huge producers of research and
oh,
development.
you
in this
mean
country.
like actual research?
Yeah.
I thought you meant like they're researching their students. What are they up to?
Yeah,
It's gonna look
funny.
pretty good. I'm like, well then.
It's painfully funny at times, but a lot of competitions on college campuses that have been initiated by manufacturers of drones to like produce new things, like new types of drones, and you win, you get a nice job or whatever they give these people, but like they recruit at a pretty young age.
You mean engineers of them?
Yes.
I didn't know about that. God, they recruit for everything at college campuses. On a different note, they do recruit for the CIA, so if you guys are interested,
Do it.
It's a
Don't
job
do
for
it.
somebody.
don't do it.
You don't want to get involved with them. Just mess everything up all the time.
Oh, well. Oh, good Lord.
I guess it's my job on this show.
It's like, don't do it. No, we're not doing that. Absolutely not. Well, we are kind of at that point where we have to wrap up. You guys want any final remarks on this subject? Luke, Will?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm content.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for coming on. Did
Thank
a
you
great
for
job.
having me, all of you.
We're glad to have you arguing. Your viewpoint is always appreciated. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our former tech guy, Adam Engel. He came in and he's been like furiously live tweeting in the corner the whole time. He's filling in for Sean, who's our usual PR guy. So thanks, Adam. We appreciate having you back.
Of course.
He's kind of like our silent sidekick over there. I don't even know if the mics are picking him up right now.
First time I've ever been silent.
First time he's ever been silent, right? Well, we'll be taping again in a few days. Should we tell them what the episode will be on? Do we want to tell them or do we want to surprise them? What do you guys think?
Let's just go for it.
You want to?
Build up the suspense.
The honor is yours. Let them know what we're going to be taping next. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so next show will be a show on spoken word and rap.
And who's performing for us? I'm really curious about that.
Chelsea Roberts. Okay, she'll be doing a spoken word piece, so everybody look out for that. And Alongside Chelsea Roberts will be yours truly.
Oh.
I will be exhibiting a rap piece. And so it'll be a good time. It'll be a good conversation. The effects of rap and hip hop and spoken word poetry today. Some talent exhibited by Chelsea and myself. So it'll be a good time.
I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great episode. All right, so we will definitely see you next week. This is The Common Thread, the official podcast of the Howard Thurman Center. I'm Amanda Dowd.
I'm Will Clapp.
Howard DePass Jr.
And we'll see you next week.